Katlego Joja, the 10-year-old autistic child who went missing last month, has thrown the spotlight on children with special needs and their heightened vulnerability to crime. Katli's body was discovered in a stream not far from her home days after her disappearance. It's estimated that autism affects 1 out of every 110 children and 1 in 70 boys, making it the fastest growing developmental disability in the world today. It's estimated that 2% of people in our country are living with autism. That's over 1 million South Africans. It's more common than childhood cancer, juvenile diabetes and pediatric AIDS combined. For more, we're joined in studio by Sandra Kloppers, the CEO at Autism South Africa. Good afternoon, Sandy, and thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Look, little Katli's case left us all so heartbroken. Just break down for us what autism is exactly and how autistic children connect with the world around them.
Autism is a neurodevelopmental disability. It's a lifelong disability. It really affects the way people interact socially with others. It affects communication. Over 60% of people with autism will never be able to communicate verbally. It affects the way they understand language too. Often the way they process their sensory information is very different, the way they process light or sound. I think it's important to remember though that every single person with autism manifests their autism very differently. They are very unique.
So we understand that it's a child's or person's social communication and interaction that will be affected. But how will this condition impact on their day-to-day living or living operations rather? And is there a chance that Katli could have wandered off?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, many of our children do tend to wander, and it's very sad that at least once a week we are sharing stories of children that have gone missing in their communities.
This is exactly it, because Katli's case is not an isolated one,
Not
Sandy.
at all, sadly to say.
All right, the last time you and I spoke, you said there were 5 government schools dedicated to autistic children. Has there been any progress on that number? And when the story broke on Katli about a month ago, I chatted with your training officers and education officers, and they felt strongly that this tragedy could have been averted had little Katli been in a school.
I do think so. The situation has definitely improved, and the National Department of Education certainly is looking at autism as a priority situation. The recent stats is actually 1 in every 59 individuals are affected by autism. So they are faced with a growing number of children with autism that are trying to access schools. In Gauteng, the situation has definitely improved. The MEC has made a commitment to ensure that every single child with autism has access to a beneficial and meaningful education, and the rest of the provinces are certainly starting to look at it. So we're hoping that there is light, there is hope for our children in this country.
In Katlego's case, we saw community really come together, and they played a pivotal role galvanizing support even when it came to the search for the missing little girl. But how conscientized or aware are our communities when it comes to a condition like autism, and how are communities and families coping with their autistic children right now?
There's a lot of stigma that goes around autism because it is what we call an invisible disability. You can't look at the child and know that there's something wrong. And I wish that that community and all of our communities actually are aware of autism before the tragedy happens. Because if somebody had noticed little Katlego wandering or walking away, they would have known there's a child that needs some support and take them back home.
You've actually preempted my next question. What kind of support do families with autistic children receive in the country right now, and is that support adequate?
Definitely not. You know, even I heard one of your guests earlier talking about the social grants. I had a parent yesterday who the diagnosing doctor at the SASA offices said, but your child can go to the toilet by himself, you don't need a social grant. There's a family desperate for support, desperate for help from the government, and because the child can independently go to the toilet, that help has now been cut off. It's very misunderstood, and the stigma around it, even with the professionals that should know about autism, is very, very poor.
Very quickly, how do members of the public contact you should they need you?
So I think the best place is our website, which is autismsouthafrica.org.
autismsouthafrica.org. Thank you so much, Sandy, for sharing your time with us on the SABC News Desk this International Day of the Protection of the Child. Our special needs children, of course, a vulnerable group within a vulnerable group. That was Sandra Kloppers joining us on the SABC News Desk. Time to cross over to Peter, who's standing by with more news.
Keshini, thanks. Now, as the world marks